Because it's not officially money. Okay, it hasn't got the Queen's head on it, and it is not a legal tender. In other words, there's no obligation for anyone to take it in.
Yes, it was a little girl's dress, and all I did was change the top a bit and put a handle on.
We've been to the charity shops and we've brought with us a lot of items of clothing, and we've also bought fabrics from curtains and the kind of fabrics that people have lying around at home. And the aim is to show them the bags that we've made and encourage them to think creatively about what kind of bag they could make out of any of these materials. And it's a privilege to see a child learning a skill from another adult, not its parent. And I think that's all part of developing a sense of community.
That's it, yeah. Now see if you... try not to pull it too tight.
One of the things that really impresses me is, as I look around this wonderful crowd of people, is how much communication there is going on. Now, I know that obviously making a few bags is not going to significantly change the carbon footprint of Newent. However, for me, there's something about refinding some of the connections that perhaps we used to have in our more local communities. So all ages meeting together, and here we have that, and all ages communicating and responding to each other in ways that often in our very busy lives we don't have time to do. The central part of transition is recreating some of these connections. I think that builds a kind of emotional resilience, which as things change, and we know things are going to change in terms of the materials that we have available, in terms of transport, in terms of oil availability, these stresses and changes that are going to happen, we need to be resourceful in meeting them. And the great strength that we have is our relationships and our communities. And I think this bag workshop again shows how people can come together and be creative, and also, of course, get a tremendous amount of pleasure out of it. There's a lot of laughter as well.
Transition for me has been the thing that has made sense of my whole life.
So I don't know if any of you have noticed some of the...
And I've had that experience reflected by a lot of people, that transition uses every bit of them.
Oh, well then swap, Peter, if you want to.
Yeah, we often ask the groups who come on our training what it is about transition that really attracted them.
It's permaculture with knobs on.
One of the things that comes across very strongly is how powerful this positive visioning for the future is in drawing people in. And for me, that's one of the most powerful things that any of us can do at this time. Close your eyes and imagine, what would your community look like if you had the future that you really want for your children? What would that look like? What would it feel like? What does it taste and smell like? What are you eating? You know, what do you wear? What do the buildings look like? What are people doing in their days? How do they look when you look into their eyes? Those sort of questions are really powerful, I think, for people to come out of the despair and have a sense that there could be another future. You know, if we don't do that visioning and imagining the world we want and then take steps towards it, we're going to get a world that somebody else wants. So at a personal level, for most people, as they wake up or, you know, come into a realisation that the world's not going to carry on as it is today, you know, initially it's often a very isolated place to be.
Yeah, and it's so hard to like, I'm the crazy person in the room. Yeah. And I think...
And it's stressful and often painful, and you know, one of the really important things is to keep connecting with people who see that the change is coming, because it helps support that in you. So that's one of the things that I think transition really provides, is a place for people who see that things are changing to connect with others who want to do something about it, and whose choice on waking up is action, you know, is to find ways of taking action, because just to take action itself brings about a transformation, you know, and it shifts that belief that I think is very pervasive in our world, that there's nothing that I can do as an individual. But actually, if we don't do it as individuals, you know, and even better as individuals who come together as groups, nothing's going to happen.
Hello and welcome to TNS News, Totnes News Station. I'm your lead anchor, Colin Parker, and tonight's top stories. Coldest weather since records began, way back in 1802. We go over to our weather reporter, Donald Carter, for more information.
We definitely wanted the ideas to be coming from them and to be a genuine expression of what they'd learned, what they discovered. As soon as you introduce the idea of the future, a lot of what comes up in kind of collective consciousness in a way is images of hoverboards and aliens, and so it took a little bit of kind of guidance.
Recently there's been rumours that a group of fat middle-aged men have been found inside the castle. They've been using small children, many as young as 8, with plastic forks to be digging for oil that has been found underneath the castle. There's been a very bad amount of oil in this country for the past 20 or so years, has it?
People told stories about their schools, about celebrity culture, all sorts of wonderful, wild ideas.
I see, but what about your clothes? Surely they must be made by machines.
We press them ourselves, with material made from blind nuns in Austria.
To envision something positive, we show the possibility of how it could be different and then find ways of moving towards it. And that feels absolutely essential to what Transition Tales was about the power of storytelling, really.
Stories shape the way that we act. There are probably 3 dominant cultural stories about the future and where we're headed, and one is the sort of business as usual. Everything will tomorrow will basically look like today, but maybe slightly different, maybe bigger and faster and shinier. And the second is apocalypse. You know, we're all doomed, we're all going to hell, and there are many manifestations of that throughout the media, of course. And the third is probably this sort of idea that technology will solve all our problems, and maybe ultimately end up with Star Trek or something, like exploring the universe. And so what we're trying to do is build a fourth vision, a transition vision, which is about a more localised, resilient future in which we avoid the worst of peak oil and climate change, the worst consequences of those, and move into a future where we have lots of people living lower energy lives, but much more satisfying lives, much more fulfilling lives.